Another week, another commission of inquiry. What will it take for President Cyril Ramaphosa to stand up and lead? And what are the country's campuses telling us about how the youth will vote in 2019? Student leaders from the ANC, DA and EFF all join us in studio. The Politbureau is now in session. I'm Nicholas Bauer, presenting a live version of the program this evening, and connecting the dots for you every Sunday is ENCA's Politbureau. We want you to contribute to the issues that we unpack on the show and the hot topics that we end up discussing. We wish for you to send us your feedback on social media. You can always hit us up at ENCA as well as at Nicholas Bauer. In the Politbureau today, first up, yet another commission of inquiry. This week, Cyril Ramaphosa launched a probe into impropriety at the Public Investment Corporation. It's alleged the PIC has been used as a piggy bank for the politically connected, and the president has tasked former president of the Supreme Court of Appeal, Lex Mpati, to shine a light on the allegations. Mpati will investigate the body that manages government pensions, among other public assets and funds, alongside former governor of the Reserve Bank, Gilles Marcus, and investment banker Emmanuel Lediga. Ramaphosa also recently instituted a panel to help him find the next MPA head.
We are going to intervene decisively to stabilize and revitalize state-owned enterprises. We will urgently attend to the leadership issues at the National Prosecuting Agency Authority to ensure that this critical institution is stabilized and able to perform its mandate unhindered, without any fear of favor or prejudice. We will also take steps to stabilize and strengthen vital institutions like the South African Revenue Service. Now is the time where all of us should lend a hand. Now is the time for each one of us to say, South Africa, send me.
Well, Cyril Ramaphosa certainly does seem to be sending the commissions of inquiries, never mind the Tumamina of citizens himself. To unpack Ramaphosa's apparent inaction, one of the country's finest political minds, Gogo Aubrey Mashikri, joining us on the Politbureau this evening. Do you believe that the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is doing enough to inspire confidence in his leadership, Aubrey?
Well, in the first place, I thought it would be a mistake for him to agree to be interim president before the 2019 elections. And the reason I argued that he shouldn't take up the post before the 2019 elections is because I thought his limitations would show too soon. And his limitations are beginning to show. The second thing is, I think he would have made the perfect president as a successor to Nelson Mandela, because he is of the mold who emphasizes the symbolic, the intangible, the touchy-feely, the feel-good. But when it comes to hard matters, I don't think he is a man for this moment. So he would have been perfect as a successor to Mandela, but I don't think he's the man for this moment. And therefore, attempts to look for leadership are correct, because South Africa is in dire need of leadership. But to look for leadership from Ramaphosa, in my view, is an exercise in futility.
Tough words. He did come to power on very, very shaky ground in Nasrec. Is this essentially all we should be expecting from him, notwithstanding the apparent character flaws you've just pointed out?
Well, he is hamstrung by the balance of support and the balance of forces in the ANC. Half the party does not support him. And you have what is approaching a stalemate between the two camps in the party. There is a level of paralysis that he symbolizes as president of the ANC. I think we can credibly argue that to some extent he is a lame duck president, not only of the ANC, but also of the country, because when it comes to tough decisions, he is unable to make those tough decisions without the consent of his opponents inside the ANC.
Well, indeed, I've certainly said time and time again, who would really want Cyril Ramaphosa's job? I certainly wouldn't want the job. You've spoken previously about factions within the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa essentially being a member of one faction. If that is to be true, is he using these commissions of inquiry to slowly gather evidence and ammunition against his detractors? Or is he attempting to be seen to be doing something, thereby illustrating how actually weak he is? Instead of acting, he's just seen to be acting.
Well, he is a victim of expectations. I think he's drowning under the weight of unrealistic expectations on the part of those who are infected by Ramaphosa. And I think what he is responding to in part is the fact that the Ramaphosa index is falling, and is falling quite sharply. Remember that when governments institute commissions of inquiry, they do so for certain reasons. First of all, they do so to buy time when they are not sure about what it is they should do. And secondly, they do so to give the appearance of action when actually the term is being characterized by paralysis or inaction. With Ramaphosa, the Ramaphosa brought about the expectation that with his presidency will come a tough stance towards rent-seeking, corruption, state capture, and so on. And as I keep on saying, and as I will keep on repeating, that Ramaphosa was in part based on the idea that battles in the ANC and battles within the state are battles between angels and devils. When, of course, what we know, those of us who've been observing politics for some time, is that these are battles between angels with horns and devils with halos, and what they have in common is a God complex. And because they suffer from a God complex, they do not understand the limits of their own power, and therefore make the strategic mistake of thinking that the actions of their opponents are always predictable. And he's discovering that the actions of his opponents are not always predictable. Hence, what we see with the Zondo Commission. It was intended to be Jacob Zuma's grave, but Jacob Zuma's opponents are beginning to fall into that grave.
Expectations, though, is this expectations that have been set by Cyril Ramaphosa himself, or is this just an expectant public? South Africa has this this habit of expecting a leader to come out of nowhere, some sort of messianic figure to solve all of the country's problems.
Well, I usually say that South Africa tends to swing between hysterical pessimism and hysterical optimism. During Jacob Zuma's time, South Africa was seized by a sense of hysterical pessimism because we were going through what Arthur Koestler refers to as darkness at noon, the title of his book. So we went through this darkness at noon. And I think it's not surprising that there was expectation that the darkness of noon would be followed by a new dawn, which in my view is a false dawn or no dawn at all. So we have swung from the hysterical pessimism of the Zuma period to the hysterical optimism of Ramaphosa. Neither hysterical pessimism nor hysterical optimism are good for us, because what they do is to lower the collective intellect or IQ of the country.
But, I mean, is this not offering an ideal chance to be bold on Ramaphosa's part? There's no time like the time of a crisis to enact some bold and far-reaching moves. Is he not missing an opportunity to do something that people are not expecting him to? Why does he need help, for instance, to appoint a national prosecuting authority head?
Well, what we must remember is that Ramaphosa's lack of leadership, or poor leadership, is a function of his subjective weaknesses and objective factors beyond his control. Now, for instance, Ramaphosa did not create the structure of the economy. But also, when you look at the fact that the crisis in South Africa is deeper than the crisis in the ANC, but is a generalized political crisis, it means that to solve our economic, social, and political problems, we cannot look to one man. This idea that a powerful man will be our salvation is very wrong. We need to look elsewhere for solutions. And in this case, we need to look much broader than a single figure, such as Cyril Ramaphosa, especially since, as I say, he is not the man for this moment. I am also in doubt that the ANC is the ruling party for this moment. And when I look at the alternatives themselves seem hollow. So one of the things we must accept is that ours is a generalized political crisis, and the crisis inside the ANC is only a small part of that generalized political crisis.
A final word from you then, Aubrey. Where do the current balance of forces lie? Some would argue that Cyril Ramaphosa is slowly but surely making inroads within the NEC, providing more political cover for himself to do what's necessary for the country moving forward. Others just describing an entire stalemate. Where are we?
Well, we tend to talk about the stalemate in terms of the balance of forces inside the ANC, but actually, if you look at Ramaphosa, you must look at what's happening inside and outside the ANC. There is an extent to which Ramaphosa is accountable to the party, but is also accountable to external forces. And in my view, especially when it comes to economic policy, it is the external forces, the external factors that are more important than the internal factors in the ANC.
Aubrey, at this point in time, Cyril Ramaphosa, does he survive politically? If he gets less than 55% come election time next year for the ANC?
Well, I still expect the ANC to win an absolute majority. I don't buy this idea yet. Things may change, but I'm not persuaded yet that a coalition government is in the offing in 2019. So I do think the ANC will win an absolute majority. Not because of Ramaphosa, despite Ramaphosa, but if the trend continues to go downwards, opportunistically, his opponents will blame it on him. Because there's this idea that has taken root that Ramaphosa represents the new order, Jacob Zuma represented the old order. For me, there's no new order or old order. It's the same ANC order. Therefore, South Africa is being failed not by the Ramaphosa order or the Zuma order, but it's being failed by the ANC order.
Two sides of the same coin, if you will. Gogo Aubrey Mashikli, thank you so much for joining us on Politbureau this evening. Coming up next, the country's campuses will play a key role in next year's general election. But what does it mean when student representative councils change hands? That's the topic of discussion with the young guns of the DA and the EFF joining us next on the Politbureau. Should be lit, as the young people say.